Call me crazy if you want, but I've never liked store-bought pesto.
That's absolutely insane, Susie. Let me give you another story just along a similar vein in time for Christmas, just as festive. So, my alcoholic and abusive parents used to steal my money all the time. If I got money for birthdays or any other events, they would hold it for me. But when it was time for me to go get it because I wanted something, it was magically gone. I must have misplaced it or something like that when they were using it, most likely to buy alcohol. So I ended up getting a paper route job at around age 11, 12, which is a whole story in its own, like letting an 11-year-old get up at 4 o'clock in the morning and ride his bike for miles and miles and miles is probably not a good idea, but that's neither here nor there. But anyway, I used to save up money because in the 90s, I loved baseball cards. I used to walk to the store all the time, get myself some cards, and I got quite a collection going. And place that we rented videos had a little sports section, and I had my eye on a 1991 Upper Deck baseball card set, the entire set. So I saved up, and I ended up buying it, and it was my little pride and joy. I loved it so much. I used to buy lots of packs, and I would put them in folders and binders and stuff, and I'd end up with some extras I didn't know what to do with, so I would put them various places, and sometimes that included the back of my Upper Deck box. I would just go to the end of it and shove some cards in there just until I could get new binders or folders or whatever. Anyway, that's important because coming home from school one day, there's police at our house, which isn't really anything out of the ordinary. We used to have police come all the time as they beat each other or whatever. And go in, though, and we're in a trailer, and the back door's pried open. Unfortunately, sometime during the day, my parents went who knows where, they said, and somebody broke into our house, stole a bunch of various items, which included my Upper Deck baseball set, which greatly upset me. So my parents got the insurance money for it and blew it on alcohol or whatever they blew money on. And, that was upsetting. So me and my brother and sister one day are playing hide and seek, and I go to hide in the dryer, and I open the dryer up, and inside, magically, is all the stuff that was stolen during the house break-in, which included my baseball card set. But I knew better than to touch anything or say anything. I didn't want to get in trouble. I just discovered a crime scene. So, just silently closed the dryer back up and continued to play. So a couple months later, now we're at the Christmas season, which as a little kid I loved, though I really shouldn't have loved because I didn't get crap for Christmas because we had no money. So I still used to get excited, and Christmas Day rolled around, and I think at this point I knew, yes, I did. I knew that Santa was not a real thing, obviously, because, the one year for Christmas, my highlight gift was a calculator. Exciting. Anyway. So, my dad's all excited, hands me my main Christmas present. Now, the other thing is this year, because we were poor, and my parents used to use whatever means necessary to get Christmas presents that they didn't have to pay anything, we ended up on angel trees. My sister got chose that year, so her gift pile was much bigger than ours. We used to get things like silly putty, little things like that, dollar store stuff. Nothing spectacular once the drinking really took place. Anyway, Dad's so proud of himself, hands me a package, says it's from Santa. It's my main Christmas gift. So I open my gift up, and it's a 1991 Upper Deck baseball set. Look at that. Santa went out and found me a new set and brought it back. Unfortunately, that's not what happened. Because at this point, being, 12-ish or however old I was, it was getting close to the end of things. I knew better. So I just silently flipped to the back of the set, where in my set, I'd shoved some extra cards that didn't belong to that set. And lo and behold, those cards were back there. So either Santa truly is magical and also returned the extra cards that I had in there, or the more likely suspect is my parents stole my own item, hid it for insurance money, and then wrapped it up for me and gave me my own stolen item back for Christmas. And that was my main Christmas present. I think I got some lifesavers and some other stuff on top of that. So, unfortunately now, that is one of my PTSD things. And it sucks because I've hurt people because I appear ungrateful. So when it comes to gift giving, the core part of me, the part that I know, the part that is me, doesn't really need anything. Like if somebody gets me something, great, that's wonderful, but I don't specifically need anything. But my brain doesn't think that, thanks to the damage that my parents did. If somebody gets a lot of gifts, somebody gets any gifts and I get nothing, it triggers my brain and I will get upset. And I'm not a materialistic person, but unfortunately this PTSD makes me sometimes seem like a materialistic person, and it's really not fun. And I've hurt people because they bought me something and my brain reacts like, this is just a little tiny thing, what is this? Look at all the great things that those people are getting. And it really sucks. Anybody with PTSD triggers that they cannot help will understand that that is not you, but your brain makes it seem like you. So anyway, that's my crazy Christmas story. So hope everybody's having a good holiday season so far. We're a little over 2 weeks from Christmas. My Christmases are better now. I don't get recycled, stolen items back. So anyway, have a good one.
Call me crazy if you want, but I've never liked store-bought pesto. I don't know why. I think it's because it never has enough.
Hi, I won't call you crazy, I think you're right, but let me tell you how totally crazy the law in Poland was so far. I hope it will change soon with the new government. But that's the story of my dad, who built a house not far from his brother, as they both received the land from their parents. And he quickly moved in with his new wife, my mom, and she got pregnant. They were like almost 1 year after they get married. And unfortunately, he got cancer, he had leukemia, and he died at the age of 26. My mom was pregnant 3 months with me, so he never saw me, I never saw him, I never knew my dad. Apparently he was very nice, very clever maths teacher. And she was with me almost 6 years till she met a new guy. Unfortunately, not a very nice man, but that's another story. Anyway, since my dad died, my uncle and his parents, my grandparents, quickly decided they want a house and they want the part of the land. So they made my mom's life hell. They were putting stuff by, some smelly things by the door, by the windows. They were insulting her. They never came to see me. They were never talking to me when I was playing in the garden, and they just passed me. And soon it just became really unbearable. And even when my mom went once on holiday with me, someone just broke in and stole lots of stuff, all her jewelry, and she knew it was them. She knew because during they were not even hiding it, but during the communism it was very easy to find someone to do nasty stuff for just a bit of money. And my uncle had lots of contacts and with police as well, and there was lots of corruption. So he could do whatever he wanted. And so my mom was fighting for this house for 48 years, since I was born. And then finally she gave up. She just gave up, and I was not interested to carry on because I'm living abroad since I finished university in Poland. There was no work with French language, so I quickly left. And I had no time, no money for the lawyers and to come over and fight for it. And this house just got completely ruined, and it was a nice, big house in the center of the city. But nobody got it. But so my mom sold the rights to this house to someone else who just tries to take care of it, and apparently it's not easy still. But just how totally crazy some people are, just the length they go just to get something that doesn't belong to them. My grandparents died many years ago, and the wife of my uncle died, but he will still carry on, and he's still alive, and he will just never give up. Here we go, crazy story for you.
Call me crazy if you want, but I've never liked store-bought pesto.
Susie, that is downright redonkulous. Anyway, it reminds me of this time when I was in, high school. I would say I was probably a sophomore in 1997. Now, they were going to re-release all three original Star Wars movies in the theater for the first time since their original runs, each a couple months apart. And it was finally time for my favorite, Return of the Jedi. And I was stoked to see Return of the Jedi in the theater. I was 2 years old when it came out the first time. So I was beyond excited. And my parents knew this. Like, they knew I had been a Star Wars fanatic since I was like 2 years old. So, already all set to go, opening night, super excited. Also, very happy at the time because I had my first, pretty serious girlfriend, and she was awesome. And around the same time that I was going to go see Return of the Jedi, she was supposed to come to my house for the first time and meet my parents. So I was super excited. So, my mother, being the weird, abusive mother that she was, decided that when she was shaving her legs and accidentally took off a huge chunk of skin, she would save it so she could show me after I got out of school one day and gross me out. So she waited till I got home, I was having my after school snack, and she's like, "Ooh, look at this piece of skin that came off when I was shaving the other day. Isn't it gross? Look at this giant piece of skin." And I was just like, "Ooh, that's disgusting. Like, why are you showing me that? It's so gross. Please stop, please stop." And like a child, she's putting it close to me like, "Ooh, look, gross, right?" So, another thing you need to know about my mother is that she has this almost physical aversion to the word booger, to the point where we weren't allowed to ever say it. If your nose was stuffed, there were noogies in it. That's what she came up with. Like, "Oh, do you have noogies? Do you need to blow your nose?" Because booger just grossed her out to no end. Booger, snot. She would be less upset at us if we said the F word in the house. I mean, she'd be mad, but not as mad as if we said booger. So she's putting this skin in my face, and finally I'm just like, "Booger, booger," just to get her away from me. And she flips out. And she's like, "I can't believe you would say that. You know it grosses me out. You know you're not allowed to. Now, you can't go see Return of the Jedi in the theater, and your girlfriend can't come over." And I was like, "What? But I didn't do anything. Like, you did... What?" And then, after she calmed down, she was like, "Okay, fine. One or the other. You can either go to the movie, or you can have your girlfriend come over." And, of course, because at the time, as much as I love Star Wars, my hormones were more in command. So, of course, I was like, well, I'm not going to choose a movie over my girlfriend. So, of course, I'm going to still have her come over. And then my mom, as if it was this sick test that she had planned from the beginning, she's like, "Yes, you made the right choice. And since you chose her, you can still do both things." So I just went through all this psychological torture to basically end up where I already was. But fuck, store-bought pesto. Shit, I can't even imagine.
Call me crazy if you want, but I've never liked store-bought pesto.
Wow, Susie, that is so crazy. Kind of reminds me of the time. Trigger warning, by the way. Infant death. So, trigger warning. It kind of reminds me of the time that I was at my house, and I don't know if you guys heard of Ep.04, but they kind of come in the house to, help kids grow and learn, and I always take stuff like that, to help my kids. I have 5 kids, by the way. 4 boys and a girl. Well, she came for my older one, and my older child, and every time she came, I had just had my son. He was 2.5 months old. I always bring her down to him down to her, excuse me. And so that's what I did. I brought him down. She held him, loved him, and then she kind of set him down on the couch. Well, she ends up finishing Ep.03 with my son, and then she leaves. Well, my son's still on the couch because he's 2.5 months old. He's kind of like swaddled, just sleeping, relaxing. Well, he was just taking a little nap on the couch. Well, my fiance was in the kitchen, which is like right beside the living room, making blueberry muffin. all my other kids wanted to be upstairs to play in the room. So I was upstairs, playing with my older ones. He was downstairs making blueberries with my son Jaden, my 2.5-month. Well, he came upstairs to let everybody, give everybody blueberry muffins, and then he went downstairs to go get my son, and he starts patting his back, and he realizes there's no movement. He's not moving. Well, he starts yelling and screaming, obviously. My son had, puked up a lot of stuff. He was not responsive. I called an ambulance. I called my mom, who luckily lived right down the street. Not luckily, but was right down the street. She came up. She got there 2 seconds. My fiance started doing CPR on him to, try to get him, breathing. Sorry, I gotta keep stopping. This is a hard story. Well, it takes the ambulance and cop. Well, the cop gets there. It takes about 10 minutes for the cop to get there. And this cop tells me to this day, it's been 5 years. She tells me to this day that she has nightmares of what happened, because she didn't know what to do. She just stood there and, kept telling my fiance, "Good job, Daddy. Keep doing what you're doing," with CPR. That's all she could do. And it took the ambulance a half hour to get to my house, which is right downtown. It's literally a 5-minute drive. It should not have taken that long. I think they, parents call ambulances for their kids a lot, "Oh my God, ah!" And they get there and everything's fine. I think they thought that was that situation. Obviously, it was not. Well, finally, they get there. Well, they, start doing what they gotta do. They had to actually, on the way to the hospital, they had to stop because I guess his heart stopped. They had to bring him back to life, halfway to the hospital. Well, they get there to the hospital and they tell me, after a little while, after doing tests and stuff, they tell me it's looking good. He's got a strong heartbeat. He's just not breathing on his own right now. But, he got a strong heartbeat. Well, they were not equipped to deal with this, so they called a children's hospital. And it took children's about an hour to get there from, helicopter. Well, once children's got there, children's pulled me to the side and was like, "Yeah, your son's probably not going to make it. So you need to prepare yourself." And I just dropped, because I had been told by the hospital that, he had a strong heartbeat. And, at this point I'm thinking, I'll take him anyway. I mean, if he didn't have air to the brain and if I had to help him walk the rest of his life, I don't care. Just get him better. I don't care. So they get to the hospital, they hook him up to a bunch of machines and stuff. He don't look like himself no more. And I could tell that it was bad. He fought for 12 strong hours, until they came in and told me that if I didn't let him go, that he would probably go into cardiac arrest. And we didn't want that. He was already suffering, having seizures and stuff, and we didn't want that. So we had decided after 12 long hours to let him go. And my mom was with me, and my fiance was with me, and my mom held him first because I was really scared. I didn't want to watch him pass. I just couldn't. Because I was just thinking the worst. Well, my mom held him, and then my fiance held him. And then finally I held him, and the nurse comes in, and she's like, he's gone. Mama, he actually held on until he was in your arms. We thought he was gone, and then a little flicker of a heartbeat when he was put in my arms. And so he did end up passing in my arms. And I know all this is crazy, but there's even more crazy to the story. It's a long story, and I'm sorry. First was he had whooping cough, and his doctor, instead of taking him to that hospital, she decided to send him home. Whooping cough, I didn't know at the time, but anyone that's under 3 months old should be hospitalized. I didn't know that. He also had acid reflux, and the doctor knew that too. Still, she sent him home. She did a test, and a week later, I hadn't heard anything, and he was still coughing so bad. And I called her, and I'm like, what the heck? Like, what's going on? And she was like, oh, yeah, the test came up inconclusive, so we're going to probably have to retest him. I'm like, yeah, it's getting worse, so that's what we need to do. And so we took him to get retested, and she said, oh, yeah, whoo, he has whooping cough, crazy, and put him on an antibiotic and sent him home. And literally 2 days later is when he passed away. Yeah. And another crazy part to this story, I'm not going to post a video, but I had some evil person that I thought was friends with my fiance. Not really friends with me. I didn't really like her, but I wasn't mean to her or nothing. She was at the hospital when all this was happening. The hospital that couldn't deal with him. And she's videoing me. Like that's what I told you, that Children's came and told me that he wasn't going to make it. She got all that on video. She was sitting right where the door opens to the ER. And just anytime she could take a picture of me or the cops, she was. Well, she got the exact moment that I was told that my son wasn't going to make it, because I left the ER room bawling my eyes out, and I went outside. And she got that. So I forever have the great memory of, it's all over the internet. Not over the internet, but she sent it to everybody. We have the same friends. So she sent it to all the same friends that I have, because actually that's how I ended up with it. Well, I got a message from one of my friends telling me what a piece of crap I was because I put my son in a dresser and just shut it because he was crying. I flipped out. I said, what are you even talking about? Like, no. And he was like, he told me what happened about her sending the videos to him and saying that I put him in a dresser drawer and shut it, and I'm probably going to jail because it killed him. All kinds of stuff. So everybody around where I live thought that I had killed him. Obviously, the truth came out. I tried to sue the girl and the hospital, but nothing ever happened. They did move the chair, though, that was at the ER door, and put a umbrella stand so nobody can sit there again, so it won't happen again. But still, it's messed up. Obviously, the autopsy said he had pneumonia and SIDS, sudden infant death syndrome. So I couldn't even sue the doctor who sent his butt home and didn't care that he was really sick. But he did end up saving my neighbor's son's life. He was 2.5 months old, and he caught the whooping cough, went to the same doctor. Doctor sent him home. She's like, yeah, no. This child just died. I'm taking him to the hospital, the good hospital, and she did. And it saved his life. But yeah, wow, Susie, that's crazy.
Call me crazy if you want, but I've never liked store-bought pesto.
That's pretty crazy, girl, but I got a story to tell you about how I was legally kidnapped as a teenager. So, it all started when I was about 14 years old. My mom, unfortunately, passed away from cancer. My mom was my world, so I became extremely depressed after that. Didn't want to go to school, had very bad social anxiety, like really bad. Didn't want to leave the house, especially didn't want to go to school, didn't want to be around my peers. So anyways, 2 years later, last day of junior year, thinking the next day I'm going to go clean out my locker and hang out with my best friend and whatever. No. I get woken up at 4 a.m. by 2 strangers standing in my room telling me I need to get out of bed, that I have a plane to catch at Newark Airport. And I'm like, excuse me? What do you mean? And they're like, you need to get up right now. So basically, they dragged me out of my house and took me on a plane. Finally told me I was going to North Carolina. Wouldn't tell me where I was going, wouldn't tell me why. Just that I'm going to North Carolina. Fast forward, I get to North Carolina to a wilderness program in the mountains there. I was there for like 60 to 90 days. It was Not fun. Did not like it at all. Was told if I finished the program that I'd get to go home. That was a lie as well. I didn't get to go home. I finished the top of my class there, made it to responder level, but I still didn't get to go home. I was shipped to Massachusetts to a therapeutic boarding school, which when you first got there, you didn't just get to go straight to campus. You were in kind of like another little wilderness program sort of thing. Not as intense as the one I was just in, but still the same kind of thing. I was not happy about that at all, as were a few others that were there with me. So we decided to run away. We basically, every night, at the end of the night, people on campus and people in the beginning program would meet upstairs in the great room. Like, everybody on campus would meet up there. So we decided that when everybody was going to head up there, that we would go to the bathroom, and then when everybody was upstairs, we would bolt out the door and run. So we did. We bolted, we ran. Several hours later, we were caught, which sucks, but so we were brought back to the facility. Then, a few days later, I get notice that I'm going to be leaving, and I got all excited thinking I'm going to go home. No. So, I was basically named as the ringleader, which I don't understand why, but whatever. That's water under the bridge. So I get sent to Tennessee to a level 4 lockdown facility. So 2 transport people came pick me up again, took me on a plane to Tennessee. I get to Tennessee to Peninsula Village, which is this level 4 lockdown facility. And it was hell on earth. I was restrained over 120 times in a 6-month period, both physically, chemically, mechanically restrained. I was punished with antipsychotic medication, even though I was not antipsychotic, to levels that are unheard of. Like, most doctors didn't believe me until I showed them my records from these places, and they were like, what in the hell? They're like, this is illegal, this is not okay, this is unheard of. I'm like, even in an adult, you don't give them these dosages. And I'm like, yeah. There was a lot of abuse that went on there, physically, mentally, you name it, like really bad stuff. I can get more into detail of what happened there, but I'm trying to make this video not 30 minutes long or longer. It was really, really bad. I tried everything I could to get out of there. I remember one time the director of the program came in. He backed me into the corner of the timeout room. He got right up in my face, put his finger in my face, and was like, you think you're so smart that you're going to get out of here. You're not going anywhere. And I said, yeah, watch me, bro. And I think like a month later, I ended up getting shipped to my final program, which was in Texas. It was called Marydale Achievement Center. And I feel like that place was kind of the cleanup crew for the Peninsula Village, like the cases they know they really screwed up on, that they should never have gone as far as they did with those patients. But anyways, and then in Marydale, I turned 18 and finally got to go home. These places were awful. Kids have literally died in these type of places. There's ones that are even worse. There was some in other countries where kids were kept in dog cages. There's like all kinds of crazy shit that goes on in these kinds of facilities. And in 2006, I think it was, I got home in 2005. In 2006, 2007, I started speaking out against these places. I used to do all kinds of things to try to expose them, speak out against them. And many times I was tried to be silenced. I was sent death threats. I was followed. I was tried to be run off the road by people with license plates that I knew where they were from. And it was just insane. I went through hell when I tried to talk about this back then. But I still kept going. It was a lot. Like, people didn't speak about this back then much. And I had gone to Washington, D.C. a few times to try to speak out about this. Even went to the 2008 GAO congressional hearing on the troubled teen industry, which they were supposed to try to make some bill to have more oversight in these places, which of course went nowhere. But I appreciate them trying. I mean, these places are terrible, and they're all over the place. Like, they're everywhere, and people don't know about them. And most of them are out in the middle of nowhere. Like, you would never even know they're there, and they're very hush-hush. And thankfully now, people are able to share their stories and are speaking out against these places. And thankfully we have people like Paris Hilton, who did her documentary on it, which is a huge deal, like, huge deal. Like, thank you, Paris, because you started this whole movement where now people are coming out with their stories and feel safe to come out with them. Like, back when I used to try to tell my story, back before this all became a thing where people could tell their stories, like, it was scary, I'm not gonna lie. Like, I used to have my websites, which I still have, but I had my website which had my testimony and a couple other people's testimonies, and I used to pay for the website hosting so I could see who was visiting my pages. And the companies that owned these places that I was speaking out against were literally on my site every day watching what I was doing. They were sending me death threats. They were doing all kinds of crazy things, and it was like pure hell. And then after a few years I kind of backed off of it for a while because life happened and stuff, but I've never forgotten about this, and I've been kind of waiting for this moment where everybody's coming together to tell their stories. And I hope that by all of us coming together to share our experiences with these places, that we can make a difference and get these places shut down for good, because there's no reason that these places should exist. They don't do any good for people. They don't help kids. They do way worse, actually. Like, I've suffered with complex PTSD ever since then. Like, I started off with going in with just depression and like normal reaction to a child losing her mother, and I come out with like way worse problems, like extremely complex PTSD that, you know, has gotten a little better now that I'm 30, gonna be 37, but I'll never be the same. Like, never will be the same that I was before I was in these places. And unfortunately, I've lost a few of my friends to suicide who were in these places because it just got the best of them. And it breaks my heart that this is happening to these people. And they're good people. Like, they're good kids. They weren't bad kids. And even if they were, they still don't deserve this. Like, nobody deserves what happens in these places. Nobody. I don't care what you've done, you don't deserve it. Like, these places are awful, and they need to be shut down. They need to, at the very least, have oversight. But really, most of them need to be shut the hell down and held accountable for what they've done to so many families, so many children. It's awful, and thank you all for everybody who is speaking out against this. Like, I'm so happy that this is finally happening and that people are able to share their stories without fear of what's to come if you do. Keep up the good.
Call me crazy if you want, but I've never liked store-bought pesto. I don't.
Pretty crazy, Susie. You should write a book. I once had a problem with sleepwalking, but it would generally only happen when I drank alcohol, and I just wasn't a big drinker in my life. But one time when I first moved to Hawaii, about 10 years ago, I was working as a caregiver at like this $1 million house, which was an okay house, and I actually got into a fight with the other caregiver, like a real fight. And so I was like, okay, I'm just gonna leave, you know, and not have any problems with this other guy, because the guy had like a relationship with the old man that lived there. It was an old man and old lady in a wheelchair. But so I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna leave. But while the few months I was working as a caregiver living out of the house, I didn't know Hawaii very well, but I saw a set of woods, so I always like, you know, drove by it and was like, oh, if things don't work out at the caregiver house, I'm going to go live in those woods. So when I'm leaving the caregiver house, before I leave, the old man's like, oh, thank you for, you know, being nice and leaving and everything. I'm like, yeah, okay. And he had this big like cardboard box full of like old alcohol, and he's like, me and my wife, we don't drink anymore. We've collected all this alcohol over the years. So there's like 20-year-old scotch, like 30-year-old bottle of wine, like all this like expensive alcohol, right? And I didn't drink, but I was leaving the house going to the woods, so I'm like, oh, I'm gonna need something to do. So that's one of the only things I take is the big box of alcohol, right? And then so I'm walking like to the woods, and then I go to the woods and I walk into the woods, and then right away I'm greeted by a dog, like a big dog runs up, and I'm like, oh shit, you know, and I said on the box, and something like Micronesians that like live out there in a big camp, they had like livestock, chickens and stuff, like a dozen of them. And some Micronesian comes like, "Oh, what are you doing out here?" And I'm like, I pull out a bottle. I'm like, "Oh, peace offering." So then he takes the bottle. He's like, cool." And then both of us start drinking. And he takes me back to the camp, and we start drinking. And I'm all drinking with Micronesians. Like I said, I don't normally drink alcohol. So then like the Micronesian women come, and I'm just like, Micronesia. And then I'm like, I remember I told them like, I'm from Texas. And they're like, oh, Texas? And I'm like, yeah, Texas. Like, ooh, we don't know. I'm like, San Antonio Spurs, because one had a basketball jersey on. He's like, oh, Spurs, go Spurs, go Spurs. But anyways, we start drinking alcohol, and I don't normally drink alcohol. They had a tent, so I had a tent set up. And the last thing I remember is they brought me back to the tent, and I lay down in the tent. And they say you should never wake a sleepwalker, because the sleepwalker can go into shock. And the thing is, when you're sleepwalking, if you've ever seen a sleepwalker, a lot of times, most of the time, their eyes are open, but they're still asleep. And like when I sleepwalk, I would do weird things like walk around the apartment and just like open up cabinets and like start cooking stuff or scratching on the walls and stuff. Just some strange ass shit. And it would only happen when I drank alcohol. So anyways, on this night, while I'm drinking alcohol with the Micronesians, and they pick me back in the tent, I'm saying you never wake a sleepwalker because they go into shock. And while you're sleepwalking, your eyes are open. So the last thing I remember, I was just laying in the tent, and all of a sudden, boom! I just appeared somewhere, and I didn't know where I was or what I was doing. My arms were just like out this. I appeared on a upside down shopping cart at the bottom of a river, pouring down rain, with water going up to me, like rising up, and I'm standing on the shopping cart like Daniel-san style, like you know, and then I'm just like, where the heck am I? I didn't know who I was, what country I was in, anything. I'm like looking around, it's like a jungle. I didn't know how I got there. I just appeared there. I didn't wake up like, oh, where am I? I was just like, boom, like imagine just appearing somewhere, and that's why you go into shock if you ever wake a sleepwalker. So I went into shock, and I'm just like, oh shit, and I'm just standing on the shopping cart, and the water's getting higher and higher, and each of the sides of the wall is like 6 feet, so even if I wanted to get out, it would be really hard to climb with all the rain and the water. And so the Micronesians that I was drinking, they're like, what the hell are you doing? Like, Gregory, what are you doing? Gregory. And I'm like, and I hear like voices, and it's like in another language. So I'm like, okay, I'm somewhere in Asia or some jungle. Like I didn't know who I was or what I was. And then the Micronesians come up, and they're like, oh, and then they like throw me a bridge, and then like something like a long stick to grab onto, and then I'm like just basically naked and stuff. And then they like pull me out of the water. I pull up, and I go into the tent, and I lay down like completely naked. And then it just like rained. It was one of the rainiest winters in Hawaii. It just rained. But then while I was in that tent, since I was fucking walking around that dirty ass water, I all of a sudden developed like lesions on me, and I had like all these like big pus emitting sores all over my arms, legs, and they started going up my neck and everything. And it was some like fucking thing that I caught in the water, and so I went to the hospital after it got real bad with my pus lesions, and they were like, they did a little test. They had me in like a room. They're like, you had a serious, you know, something. It's good you came here in time. And then they gave me antibiotics, and boom, it went away. But hey, that's the story of my sleepwalking with the Micronesians. Buy my book, Gonzo Education.
Call me crazy if you want, but I've never liked store-bought pesto.
Oh my God, Susie, that's so crazy. You know what's crazy though? When I was in the 2nd grade, there was this girl, and she was 3 years older than me, and she was walking near where my elementary school was, and she got kidnapped. And then they found her body in a field 3 days later. And my parents had to sit me down and have this whole talk about how her kidnapper was still on the loose, and he was still at large, and her name was Jessica Ridgway. And no one else remembers the murder of Jessica Ridgway, but I remember it because I think about it all the time. And I think that's actually why I ended up being really, really into true crime, like creepy, weird amounts of into true crime. I think it's because of Jessica Ridgway. Oh, also, her murderer was a 17-year-old who went to the high school that my cousin would have gone to if she had been wealthier. But she's not wealthier, so it's fine. She didn't go to his high school. And he got arrested because his mom overheard him bragging on the phone to one of his friends. Yeah. Anyway, I think that's kind of crazy. But yeah, store-bought pesto too.
Call me crazy if you want, but I've never liked store-bought pesto.
Wow, Susie, that's insane. You are a crazy girl. But not as crazy as the time that I was about maybe, I don't know, 13, 14 years old. And I was looking through old pictures of like my family and stuff, and I was just reminiscing and, you know, going through old pictures and stuff like that. And I come across this picture of my mom. I've seen it a million times, but I swear to you, for a split second, it was like a flash. It looked like in the picture, my mother was burnt. Like, not the picture itself, not around the picture or the picture burning or anything. No, my mother in the picture for a split second looked like she had burns all over her body, like Freddy Krueger. Like, I couldn't explain it, but that's how it looked for a split second, and it freaked me out. I dropped the picture and I ran to the phone and I called my mom, and I was like, and I hadn't seen my mom in a few like months, you know, broken homes, split families, whatever. So I call my mom and I'm like, Mom, please be careful around fire. Like, whatever you do, just please be careful around fire. And she literally drops the phone. And I'm like in tears by this point. I'm like, Mom, I'm just freaking out. And she picks up the phone again and she's like, how did you know? And I was like, what do you mean? And apparently, for the last 2 weeks, something like that, she had been taking a lot of Klonopin for her anxiety and falling asleep with cigarettes in her mouth. To the point where she actually, you know, was smoking a cigarette, fell asleep, and burnt her chest. And then, just the day before I called her and I told her about my experience with her picture, she told me that she fell asleep with a cigarette in her mouth and caught the freaking couch that she was sleeping on fire. Tell me if that's not crazy. But pesto's crazy.
Call me crazy if you want, but I've never liked store-bought pesto. I don't know why. I think it's because it never has enough.
You're crazy! But so's this. I went on a date. The guy started eating pizza off of other people's plates. I decided that we should go home. He wouldn't stop drinking or leave my house after I'd asked nicely. The cops had to come and take him away. The next morning, I woke to him knocking at my window, shirtless and shoeless, with flowers he'd stolen from other people's gardens on his run to my house. I reminded him we were broken up and handed him the phone that he had broken and thrown at me. And realizing his phone was broken, he decided to leave to take care of business. What did he do? He went to the mall and ripped open the Verizon wire gate to get in and steal himself a new phone. So he went back to prison. Wonder why? Well, pesto's pretty crazy though, right?
Call me crazy if you want, but I've never liked store-bought pesto.
Susie, that's absolutely insane. That actually reminds me of a story about my mom, Susie. And so let me tell you, one time I was like laying in bed, it was about 10:30 at night, and I get a call from the hospital pharmacy. And they said, hi, this is so-and-so from the hospital pharmacy. I'm just calling because I need to know what medication Susan was on when she came in here. And I was like, what? I was like, I don't know. Now let me give you some context. A few days earlier, prior to this day, my mom was actually in there for a procedure, okay? And so the procedure went fine, so honestly, that's what I thought he was referring to, and I was like, okay. I was like, maybe she's getting more pain meds or something, I don't know. And I was like, I don't know, you know, like, I don't know. And I'm like, why are you calling me? And they were like, oh, well, you're on her list. And I was like, okay. This is weird. I said, that's usually my sister Pam that kind of, you know, gets her prescriptions and stuff. And so I said, no, I don't know what she was on when she came in there. I said, why don't you just ask her? And they said, oh, because she's unresponsive. Okay, now you got my attention, Mr. Pharmacy Man. I sat up in the bed and I said, wait, what? And they basically told me, yeah, your mom is here and she is unresponsive. And I said, well, what happened? And they said, well, she was in a car accident and she was actually at Holland Hospital and then she got transferred to here. And they said, we just need to know what kind of medication she was on. So at this point, I am sobbing. And he was like, oh, I thought you knew. And so I get off the phone with him and I call my sister and she's at a holiday party about an hour away. And I said, Pam, we have to go to the hospital right now. Mom's at the hospital and she is unresponsive. And she starts sobbing and they start getting ready to leave to head to the hospital because our mom is brain dead in the hospital. And then you get back on the phone. I don't remember how because some of this is a blur. It all happened so fast that you get back on the phone with the pharmacy and they sound like they're trying to cover something up, but then you don't really like catch on to it because you're like, okay, whatever. And so then you get off the phone. I don't even remember what we said, but we get off the phone. So then I decided I should call my mom's best friend because it's her roommate and they literally go everywhere together. So I just assumed they were in the same car. So I called her and she answered and she sounded really groggy. And I was like, oh my gosh, she's either really hurt in the hospital or she's sleeping, or maybe she's sleeping at the hospital. I don't know. So I'm like, Tammy, oh my gosh, my mom's in the hospital. And she was like, what? And I said, yes, she's in the hospital. She's at Holland Hospital and she's brain dead and she's unresponsive and we need to go right now. She was in a car accident. And she was like, what? And I said, yes, Tammy, we gotta go. And she said, no, she's not. She's in here sleeping. I said, no, she's not. And she said, yes, she is. And I said, you take me to her right now. You go to her room right now and you wake her up. And so she goes to her room and I kid you not, you guys, she shook my mom awake and my mom was there sleeping in bed. She was so confused. I said, Mom, oh my gosh, like I literally dropped the phone and just started sobbing. I was like, Mom, oh my gosh, you're here. I was like, but I'm like spewing. I'm like, they said you're in the hospital. And so she's like, what? And I said, yes. And so then I don't even remember who called who. I think they called me. So they called me back, or maybe I called them. I don't even remember, but we're on the phone back with the pharmacy. And I'm like, look, my mom is in bed. What's going on? And basically they were like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. We're not really sure what happened. There must have been a glitch in the system. Basically saying like this kind of stuff happens. And it must have been a different Susie that was, in the hospital. So I was like, what? So yeah, but store-bought pesto, insane.
Call me crazy if you want, but I've never liked store-bought pesto.
Wild times, Susie, wild times. You want to know what's crazy is when you are from Nova Scotia, but you randomly move to Calgary, Alberta, just for like 6-7 months in between school, and you go to a bar with a friend to play pool because you're bored and don't really want to be around people, but you randomly run into a brother that you didn't know you had who looks exactly like your dad, who passed away 2 years ago at that time. So it was like seeing a ghost for the first time, and processing the fact that you had a brother that you didn't know you had. So yeah, that was crazy. Not quite as crazy as the pesto, but
Call me crazy if you want, but I've never liked store-bought pesto.
Wow, Susie, that is crazy, girl. Anyhow, did you know that the shooter at the Trump rally was actually able to fly a drone around the area 2 hours before Trump actually took the stage? You see, Secret Service can actually shut down and make those areas restricted for drone usage, but somehow, this 20-year-old was able to bypass those securities. That's weird.
Call me crazy if you want, but I've never liked store-bought pesto.
Wow, crazy. So this one time when I was 13, I started like growing hair and I wasn't having a period and stuff was like going on that was super weird in my body. Like I wasn't developing like normal girl. So I had like a beard and all sorts of weird ass shit going on. So my mom took me to the doctor, and at the doctor's office, they found out that I have polycystic ovarian syndrome and told me at 13 years old that I was never going to have a baby. So I was like totally cool with that. I was like, I don't want kids. Kids suck, whatever. Like I don't want kids. I was like 13, whatever. So when I was 15, I met this boy, and he and I were the bestest of friends. We were thick as thieves. Like, I'm telling you, nothing could separate me and this boy. We were the bestest of best friends, and we hung out practically every single day. We did everything together. We would walk around like the city late at night, like looking for cigarettes and weed and whatever we could get our hands on. Just like in our teenage dirtbag phase, basically. And I fell in love with this boy, and he did not feel the same way for me. It was super weird and awkward, but it was very complicated. So I lost my virginity to him, and it was like this whole very complicated, very weird thing. And for like about a year and a half, he and I just totally inseparable. So I moved away, and he also moved away, and we went on and lived our lives. And I did not hear or talk to him for about 10 years. I did not hear from him. So, a couple years ago, I was newly single, looking around on Tinder like most people do when they're newly single. And who do I find? Mr. Bestie from when I was 16 years old. Haven't spoke to this man in 10 years, and I see him, and I'm like, Well, I mean, he's still cute, so why not? So I match with him, and he writes me, and he's like, "Hi, new friend." And I'm like, "New friend? What?" So then he messages me back, and he's like, oh, wow, like, no way, it's you, oh my god. So we meet up, and things were very complicated at this point in time, because I had just gotten out of a really abusive relationship. And I was, like, the trauma bond just, like, was not broken. I was still totally in love with my ex, but I was like, why not? Like, I loved this man back in the day, obviously for some sort of a reason, so, like, why not? Like, let's give it a try. So, he and I spent about a year fooling around, and me trying to get over my crap, and him trying to get over his crap. And during this entire year, he's like talking about marriage, and he's like head over heels in love with me, and I just do not feel the same way, which is so fucking ironic. Like, it's the most ironic thing, because the tables completely switched. They're switched, okay? So he's like, I want to get married, like, I want to start a family with you. And I'm like, first of all, I can't get pregnant, okay? First of all, that's not happening. Second of all, I don't want to get pregnant. Like, even if I could, I don't want. Like, no. No, thank you. And so we kind of, like, break it off. We stop, like, saying we're in a relationship, because I need to figure my shit out. And then we go camping. And then we do the thing while we're camping. And then a month later, I start having these really bad pelvic pains. Okay? Like, really bad pelvic pains. So I go to the emergency room. And I was pregnant. I was pregnant. So, yep, got pregnant. And, I ended up going through the pregnancy and the whole thing. And, yeah, he and I are getting married now. And, you know, pregnancy ick is a real thing. Because I could not stand the sight, touch, or smell of that man while I was pregnant. He is and was such a kid. I never thought he would get his crap together. And he is amazing. He is the default parent. He never makes me do anything if I'm, like, out of my limit of parental abilities. He is just so wonderful. And I wanted a kid with my abusive ex more than anything. So I did not get what I wanted in the best way possible. And my life is a romantic comedy. Someone should write a book.
Call me crazy if you want, but I've never liked store-bought pesto.
Susie, you're an absolute barbarian. Let me tell you about this one time I was on my way to work. So one day last year, I was on my way to work as a postpartum doula, and I have what I call a sulfur burp. Now, my husband was driving me this day, and that comes into play later on. But if you don't know me, I have gastroparesis, and when I get a sulfur burp, it typically means I'm about to have a flare, and that means that I'm most likely about to vomit, like, all over the place. But usually it means I have about 6 to 12 hours before it's gonna happen. So I was looking at this 4-hour shift, and I really did not want to reschedule it because I'd had to reschedule on them the week before. So I go, and everything ended up being fine for about 5 minutes when Mom decided to go take a shower in the only bathroom that they had in their apartment. Cool, no problem, I can be cool. Now at this point, I am taking some deeper breaths because I can tell that 6 to 12 hours is not the timeline I am working with. So I'm changing the baby's diaper, taking these deep breaths, and as I get baby redressed, I pick her up. I feel the vomit come up in my throat. I am holding a baby, so this is certainly not a moment that I can vomit in. So I start looking for an out. Where am I gonna put the baby? Bassinet in the living room, pop her down. The minute I pop her down, I feel the vomit coming back up. Dad is at the kitchen sink. Their trash can is like outside on their back porch because it was a small apartment. And so I'm hauling ass, okay? I'm like, not a classy shuffle, not like skirting, no, like huffing it, okay? I get to the front door, I pull it open, fling open the screen door. This is COVID era, okay? I've got a full N95 mask on. The vomit comes out of me so ferociously that the mask comes away from my face and then like slaps me back with the vomit. It was great, it was great. I rip the mask off my face and vomit all over there in their neighbor's bushes. Their neighbor was also their landlord, so I'm sure that was a very awkward conversation for them to have. Ugh. So I finish vomiting. I have this vomit-soaked mask in my hand, and I look up, turn around, and look back in the house, and I can see Dad through the screen door. Horrified. I'm also horrified. So I open the screen door, I go in, and I said, I am so sorry. I'm gonna go. I picked up my shit, I left their house, started walking down the road, called my husband, who had to call me an Uber to get me home, and then I got a backup doula to finish their contract. They did send me like thank you cards and a little thank you gift, and they sent me Christmas cards, so we bonded for sure. Not in the way I would have preferred though. But yeah, let's get into this pesto recipe. I'm stoked.
Call me crazy if you want, but I've never liked store-bought pesto.
That is wild. Who doesn't like store-bought pesto? It reminds me of this time back in the early 2000s when I worked for this garage door company. We were a commercial company. I'm going to leave it vague for, security purposes. My partner and I were called out to do a repair on this garage door at a motorcycle club. A very scary looking house in the rough part of the neighborhood next to a commercial mulch company. The entire neighborhood smelled like rotting wood. It's just a horrible experience to be there. And then we go to this dilapidated house that's been painted black, and we knock on the door. Guy invites us in, and it's been converted to a bar. Like, it's all hollowed out inside, and it's just there's a bar there. And they have a pop machine that's spray painted black, but all the buttons are like beer. And they've got a garage door there that opens up into like a patio area. And this garage door and the track that it's on looks like a 5-year-old with a ball peen hammer was just set free. Like, go have a time of your life, kid. So my lead man's like, we can't fix this. We got to replace all of the track and everything. We can't just fix it. And the bartender guy starts getting a little aggravated, right? And I kind of step off and let those two guys talk. And as I'm kind of looking around, looking behind the bar, and just trying to mind my own business, I'm just the helper kid, right? I noticed that behind the bar there are Polaroids, Kodak Polaroids, old school, right? And those Polaroids are of their dead homies. I assume it was their homies because they were laid out with a lot of respect, although that was very obvious they were not around with us anymore, some of them with gnarly reasons why, but all of them were laying with their guns crossed, right? Real stuff. And I start to realize what kind of predicament we are in as the bartender starts, like, that's not acceptable. We need this door fixed. So he says he's going to call the big boss guy. We'll just call him the big boss guy. He had a road name. This is a motorcycle club. So guy calls him, and I'm like, oh boy, this isn't good. Dude sounds angry on the phone. My lead man's like, hey, let's get our stuff together. We'll nail this door shut. We'll do the best we can, and then we're gonna slip out of here. That's all we can do. No big deal. I was like, okay, doesn't feel like a no big deal, but whatever. So I carry all of our tools and such, and I go back out to the truck. And as I'm out at the truck, these two people walk up to me, random people, carrying CVS bags, and try to offer to sell me deodorant and cosmetic products. That, stuff they'd probably stolen and then we're trying to, sell, obviously. So I politely say no. I kind of defuse the situation there, and they go on about their merry way, and I'm like, fuck, here we are with a commercial truck with just tools everywhere. I'm strapped with tools. So I lock everything up best I can, And I'm sitting in the truck, and, you know, I see Big Boss Man show up, and he goes inside, and he's inside forever. And I'm like, what's going on, man? Getting a little nervous. So I'm like, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do at this point. So I put my work gloves back on and put my hammer on my belt. And then I go back up to the door like, gotta get my dude. And my dude walking out the same instant that I get to the front door. And he just looks at me and he's like, we're gonna leave now. And I was like, you bet. And we just hightailed it back to the truck and got out of there. One of the most fucked up, scary situations I think I've ever been in. Asking my lead man about it on the way home. He said dude wasn't happy, but he didn't feel safe sticking around. Anyway, fucking store-bought pesto is pretty alright.
Call me crazy if you want, but I've never liked store-bought pesto.
Wow, that's crazy, Susie. You want to know what's even crazier? The time in middle school when I got drugged out of class by the principal, the security officer, and the teacher put in a room by myself without a parent, then coerced, frisked, and searched through my belongings for them to tell me that they believe I was smoking a cigarette in the teacher's bathroom, that I somehow got into the teacher's bathroom and smoked a cigarette. And when they frisked me, they found a lighter in my jacket that happened to belong to my mom because I rushed out of the house that morning with my mom's jacket instead of mine. And then later on, they found out there was an actual teacher that was smoking cigarettes in the bathroom during her lunch break. All because I got caught on camera in that area. They assumed that it was me that went into the bathroom and smoked a cigarette, and it was the teacher. But store-bought pesto, man. Gotta tell you.